Okay, guys, today we're going to work on how to use the GDC. We're looking at GDC practice test number 1, which is at the back of the package. Where in your textbook can you find how to use quadratic regression to determine a curve of best fit? There's an appendix at the back of your text, but I've already pinned this to our class page for you from the grade 9 textbook. It's there, but there's also an appendix at the back of your textbook to show you how to go through this, how to go through quadratic regression, linear regression, etc. Okay, so this is an altimeter. Is attached to a model rocket before it's launched over a lake. The table shows the recorded data from the rocket's flight. We want to enter this into our GDC. It's important to look here for where we're setting our float to. So in this case, it's asking us to set our float to 2. So we're going to go to our GDC, click on the mode button, which is already highlighted in red there. So the mode button, and I've already got my float set to 2. So if I go down to the word float and tab over to the number 2, I hit enter. And there we go. I'm on my float is set to 2. This will round everything to 2 decimal places. If you're going to another class and you want to get rid of that, say you're in science class or you run around to 4 decimal places, or you just don't want the rounding to be done by the calculator, just go to the word float and hit enter on it. And there you go. The float is gone. But for today, for this purpose, we're hitting enter on the word 2. Our float is set. I often, when I want to get out of screens that I finished with, if you look at the second function of the mode button, it's quit. So I've hit second function mode, I quit, I just get back to a blank screen, the main screen of my calculator. Now we want to enter the data, our float is set to 2, so I hit the stat menu. These are some statistics that it's given us. So I hit stat, option 1 is edit, and I've got information written there. That information is not the information from that table. I'm gonna try and split the screen here. That information is something else. So I want to get rid of that info that's there. And how do I do that? I'm just gonna go up to the top. So if I'm on here, go to the top of the list. So you're highlighting actually list 2, for example, hit clear and enter, or the down arrow. Either one of those will work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got one more number to enter there. Actually, you can use what I've got in list 1. Just go down to the bottom there and hit 7, enter, and my information's entered for list 1. Tab over to list 2 and start entering your information there. You can pause the video if you don't want to watch me enter numbers. Just pause the video and come back to it. Anyways, 28.3, 36, or fast forward, I think is what I meant to say. 37.1, 32.3, and 9.7. I'm just looking at what I type, and I definitely typed too quickly. So I entered numbers wrong there. I always want to double check you enter them correctly. So now at 37.1, 32.3, 23.5. Still didn't come out. 23.5, 9.7. Okay, so just double checking the numbers again. 36.9, 37.1. Good, good, good. And it rounds to 2 decimal places. There's 2 zeros there for a reason, because we set our float to 2. All right, this is use a quadratic regression to determine the equation of the curve of best fit. Now, I've used this GDC before, so I know if I go to the Y equal button, I've got something written there. I don't want anything written there. One thing you could do is reset your calculator from the get-go. If you want to start clean, fresh, get rid of it. But I know how to manipulate this, and I know I have to delete some stuff. So I'm going to clear that out. I hit the Y equal button again. I cleared that out. That's an equation of a line that I did with another class for something else. So I cleared that out. I do need to make sure my stat plot is on, because we entered statistics and we're going to plot them. So go to second function of the Y equal button here and make sure that that's on. How do you turn your stat plot on? Hit enter. And enter on the word on. If it wasn't on, it would have been flashing on the word off. So hit enter on the word on. So now your stat plot's on. Okay. And then we're going to go to this stat button. Okay. And we're going to tab over to the right to the word calc. So stat, tab over to the word calc. Okay. And we are going to look at option 5, which is quadratic regression, quad reg. So option 5 on your calculator. And then if you have this version of a calculator, we're going to tab down to store reg. Some guys have the TI-83 or 83 plus calculator. You have a blank screen here. What you need to do is enter second function of the number 1 button. And you'll see that the second function of number 1 is L1. So L1 will come up on your screen. Then hit the comma button, which is above the number 7. Okay. Then hit second function of the number 2 button, and L2 will go on your screen. And then hit the comma button again. So you should have L1, L2, And what that does is you're telling the calculator that whatever we put in list 1, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, are your X values. And whatever you put in list 2 are automatically your Y values. Where the guys that have this calculator, it automatically assumes, you see it says X list is L1 and the Y list is L2. It assumes that unless you tell it otherwise. Now, no matter what calculator you have, so the guys who have this one, make sure your cursor's at store reg. The guys who entered L1, L2, we're now technically on the same page. That's the difference between these two calculators. That's really it at this stage. So now we're all going to hit the VARS button, VARS. You can see it's highlighted in red on my GDC. Hit the variables button, the VARS. Then you're going to tab to the right once to the Y variables. And option 1 is function. You could hit enter or the number 1 here. And then this screen comes up. What we're doing, guys, is we're storing the linear regression, the equation, the quadratic equation for this. We're storing it here. Okay, so hit enter again or option 1. And we get back to this screen. Guys with the other calculator, you could just hit enter. Guys with this calculator, we should tab down to the word calculate and then hit enter. And this equation pops up. This is the standard form of a quadratic, y equal ax squared plus bx plus c. But a is negative 2.50, b is 18.46, and c is 2.86. So if I ask you to write the equation for this, which this question does ask us to write that, you're going to write y equal negative 2.50 x squared plus 18.46 x plus 2.86. Now, if you want it written out for you, remember, we just stored the equation. So go ahead and hit the y equal button, and it's written there for you. Negative 2.5 x squared plus 18.46 x plus 2.86. You really don't have to put the 0 after the 5, right? And negative 2.50, you don't need the 0 there, obviously. But there's the quadratic in standard form. That's the equation you're going to write down. Now, if you wanted to see your graph, and you just hit the graph button, a missing part of it, right? What you want to do is, because you entered statistics, you could zoom in on your statistics. Hit the zoom button at the top middle of your calculator and hit option 9, zoom stat. That's zooming in on your statistics. And now we've zoomed in on our GDC to those statistics. Okay. First question, or the next question, C, says use your curve of best fit to determine the height at time equals 0. Well, when time, which is the x-axis, is 0, they're really asking us for the y-intercept. Okay, this rocket was launched. It must be a little bit off the ground, right? The rocket's not sitting right on the grass. It's got a fuse under it. It's on a little launch pad, I'm sure. So how do we find out what the y-intercept is, or how high that was off the ground before it was launched? Well, we're going to do this. A lot of the information you're going to get to answer these questions comes right here. It's the second function. Hit the second function button of the trace button. Second function in the top right corner, you see the trace button with the word calc over it. So if you hit second function of that, we're now using the calculate function. And this says calculate value as 0, minimum, maximum. Well, we want to calculate a 0 value. So when time equals 0, hit 1 for value, x equal, and we want to type in 0 for x. Now, if we hit enter, look what happens. Error. The reason why there's an error is because when we zoomed in, we hit zoom 9 to zoom in on our statistics. I'll show you what happened. So we want to quit. Enter 1 for quit. And go to this window button at the top of the calculator, the window button. This shows us the parameters of our screen. The x minimum goes to 0.4, which is weird, right? Because we told the calculator 1 to 7 for all our x values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But what the calculator did is it went a little bit left of 1, so it went to 0.4. And you look at the x max in the next line, it went to 7.6, a smidge left and a smidge right. But we just asked the calculator to tell us what happens when the t, or the x value, is 0. And the calculator is saying error because it starts at 0.4. It doesn't see what happens at 0. It's out of the screen range or the window range. So just change your x minimum to, for example, change it to either 0 or maybe -5. Okay, so you hit -5. And now if you hit graph, you see it moved. It moved the parabola. It's just showing us more. It didn't move the parabola, sorry. It just moved the screen. So we see more what's on the left there. Now I'll hit second function, calculate. Option 1 is a value. And I type in 0, enter. 2.86. Gee, that number looks familiar. 2.86. We just seen that 2 minutes ago. It's written on your screen, or should be written here, because we had the equation there. Look at the top of the calculator. It has our equation written for us. y equal, we already wrote this, you guys already wrote this down. I didn't write it down yet. 2.5x squared plus 18.46 plus 2.86. This value, the C value of your equation, is actually your y-intercept. So you could just write that 2.86, and this time is its height. So it's 2.86 meters. Don't forget to put the units of measurement there. If you get a question like this in the future, and you've already established the equation, then you will not have to go find out the y-intercept when x is 0, because it's right here in your equation. Hint, hint, okay? Then it says use your curve of best fit to determine the height at 2.5 seconds. So hit second function on the calculator of that trace button again, and we're going to calculate. So second function of that is calculate. Option 1 is a value when x is 2.5. Enter. And we get 33.39. So I'm just going to write down 33.39 meters. Use your curve of best fit to determine the height at 7.2 seconds. Second function of that same button. Option 1 is a value. Type in 7.2, enter, and I get 6.17. So 6.17 meters. When does the rocket hit the water? This is where it changes a little bit. When it hits the water is when the parabola comes down and hits the x-axis. So what you have to do here is, if we want to change our window, because I don't see the x-axis right now. So go to the window button and look at the y values. There's a y maximum and a y minimum. It goes up and it goes down. Our y minimum right now is 5. I want that to be about -10 because I want to see the x-axis. I'll put a negative, use a negative button, not the minus button, -10, and now hit graph. Now you can see how we see the x-axis, but when the rocket hits the ground is on the right. I can't see that clearly. It's just a little bit off the screen. So let's go back to the window button and let's make our x maximum maybe 15. Okay, and then hit graph. Now I can see it. I see where it hits the ground. We know that when it hits the ground or when it hits the x-axis, that's an intercept, right? The value of y at the x-intercept is 0. So what we're going to use this handy feature, hit second function of the trace button again, so that calculate, and it gives you option 2, says 0. We're going to find a 0 value. We know that the y value is 0 when it hits the x-axis. So hit option 2 this time. And the question on the bottom of the calculator says left bound, question mark. Well, and there's a little asterisk you can see on my GDC flashing. And what that asterisk, right, a little cursor, is left of where I think the 0 is. Well, I know the 0 actually, not think, I know the 0's at the x-axis, right, or the x-intercept. So is that asterisk left of where the 0 is? Yes, it's left of where the 0 is. So hit enter, and it establishes a point. And then the next question changes automatically to right bound. Is it right of where the 0 is? So it wants to know, put a cursor left and right and tell me between which two lines the 0 exists or where it occurs. Well, it didn't move yet, so I have to tab to the right and get that just there and then hit enter. And now I'm telling the calculator that was the right bound. So somewhere between those two lines, left bound and right bound, between there, a 0 value exists. Now we know that the y value is going to be 0 somewhere between there when it hits the x-axis. The question now that comes up is guess. Do you want to guess the answer? No, just hit enter. And it says y is 0 there at the bottom. X is 7.54. So it hits the ground at 7.54 seconds because it's time, right? Then what is the maximum height of the rocket? So go to second function of that trace button and calculate. And option 4 is a maximum. So select 4. And now it's saying left bound again. Well, my asterisk is stuck where it was before. Am I left of the maximum? No, the maximum happens at the peak, at the vertex. So I've got to move that cursor back. Now mine's moving fairly quickly because I'll show you after why, and I'll show you how you can let that move faster. Some of you guys, if you're going left, it might go really, really slow. So now I'm left of the peak, hit enter. Then it says right bound. Am I right bound? Not yet. I go to the right of the peak and put enter here. And now I've set my parameters. The maximum value of my parabola occurs between there. Do I want to guess? No, hit enter. The maximum height is 36.94. It's the y value, 36.94 meters. The next question says, when does the rocket reach its maximum height? Well, right there. its maximum height is 36.94. It happens when, look at the X value, 3.69 at 3.69 seconds. Right, it's a little messy, sorry about that. But 3.69 seconds is when it reaches the maximum height, 3.69 seconds after it was launched. That's how you manipulate the calculator. If you have any glitches or problems or issues, you could start off by just clearing your calculator. I did say I was going to show you how to make the cursor move quick. You can do that by going to the window button, by the way, and tapping down to where it says XRes. I changed mine to 3. So when I graph things, it goes super quick. You just made the resolution less sharp. That's what happened. But if you're having any glitches, again, you can reset your calculator by hitting second function of the addition button. Okay. And option 7 is reset. Option 1 is all RAM. And then number 2 is reset. And everything's cleared. Okay. So second function, again, second function of the addition button. Option 7 is reset, then 1, then 2. It's cleared. Now everything's out of my calculator. My lists are empty. My stat plot is off. If you go to stat plot there, it's off. If I go to mode, there's no float. All that stuff is cleared back to standard. And then you could start like that if you like. Just remember to turn your stat plot on and remember to set your mode to where you want your mode to be. All right. Hope that was helpful, guys. God bless. We'll talk to you soon.